I think the Ravens are in good hands right now. I just think at the moment, Cincinnati just wins the division. They just inch them out in Week 18. That's it.
So,
Uh,
Justin, think about the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Actually, okay. Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned that. So I did say earlier I'm not high on the Steelers, but I'm not high on the Steelers in the sense that I don't think they make the playoffs. Okay. But I do believe that this is the time for Pittsburgh to, I think Kenny Pickett is the guy. I think he's the one that is gonna usher in this new era. He's gonna embody what Pittsburgh is all about. And I think at the end of this season, we're gonna start talking about Pittsburgh in a new light and say, wow, okay, this team might be able to compete with the top dogs in the AFC. I do have them making some big wins, and I think you might want to place your money on some of these things. Week 1 against Cincinnati, Brandon said it a bunch of times. Week 1 is the biggest toss up. I got Pittsburgh robbing one from Cincinnati right there. Coming off of a Super Bowl appearance, the Bengals are feeling high. Jamar Chase is cocky. Joe Burrow is oozing confidence. But guess what? Those boys up in Pittsburgh are going to roll into town and just smack you back into reality a little bit. So I got Pittsburgh knocking them off in Week 1. And I also have Pittsburgh beating Buffalo in Buffalo. I Buffalo always loses one game.
Second year in a row?
Yeah. Buffalo always loses one game where we're like, what the hell, man? When they lost to the Jags, I feel like we're gonna have a moment like that. The reason why I love Pittsburgh right here is because you have Mike Tomlin there. Mike Tomlin has shown you that he could win with just about any quarterback. It may not look pretty, but he can coach up a team to victory, and people love to play behind him. So that's one of the reasons why I just sit here right now and I'm like, yo, while this team isn't a playoff team, I could see them winning. I have them winning 10 games, but I feel like that could easily go from 8 to 10 in that range. There's some toss-ups there. But like I said, I have two upsets right here. I'm a big believer in what the Steelers are doing. Their defense with TJ Watt anchoring it, Fitzpatrick there in the back. Dude, Pittsburgh is promising, man. I'm with you, John. It's not Heinz Field anymore, but hey, new memories and whatever it's called now.
Yeah. So, John, do you want to continue with the positives? I'm sure you want to talk about. You're going to be positive about it.
Look at that smirk. Look at that smirk.
I would like to hear the negatives first, Brandon, so I can discuss.
I mean, quickly, I have the Steelers finishing 6-11. All right. Now, I mean, he laughs, but I think it's. I mean, you both laugh, but they do have the fourth hardest schedule in the league.
No, I'm laughing not because I think it's a joke, but I'm laughing because we just went from super positives and a big stab in the back.
Because I'm always going to bring you back to reality. I mean, I have them starting the season off 0-2 against the Bengals and Patriots. Then I have them winning 2 straight against the Browns and Jets. Then I have them losing to the Bills and Bucks back to back. But I do have them finishing the season off 2-0, beating the Ravens and the Browns. Listen, I love Mike Tomlin. Like you said, a lot of people say if there was a coach in football that I would want to play for, it's Mike Tomlin. All right, the people went through a brick wall for him. He's a phenomenal head coach. He's one of the elite coaches in this league. And he has proven that he can win without a quarterback. I just look at it and I say, I think Pittsburgh's a year or two away from actually starting to make some noise. I do like Kenny Pickett. I like what I saw from the preseason, from the bits and pieces that I do see, that I saw. So I am starting to believe in Kenny Pickett. But again, I think it's a year or two down the line. I love the, TJ Watt, Micah Fitzpatrick, and Najee Harris. I like that. Young core right there. But you got to wait on the quarterback. And I think once Kenny Pickett starts to get going, I have no problem, and I have full faith in Mike Tomlin coaching this team up and being a playoff contender and being a playoff team basically year in and year out like they usually are. So, I mean, it's negative, but it's what they promise in future at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think any fan would agree, unless they're Steelers hater. This team, after moving on from Ben Roethlisberger, a Hall of Famer, in my opinion, a first ballot one that Brandon would disagree on, there may not be a more positive outlook for this team. And I do agree with you, Brandon. They are a few years away from truly competing in the postseason because you have Buffalo, Kansas City, Cincinnati right now is a step ahead. The same exact thing can be said with the Ravens. I think they're half a step just because Lamar is a former MVP. and he's a player that's consistently got better, and he's the guy I want leading my team. He is so mature. He's only 25, but since he's come to the league, he's been the model example of what a first-round quarterback should be. Now, with the Steelers team, you talked about their young core with Minka, TJ, and Najee Harris. Fellas, it doesn't end there. The Steelers have one of the most dynamic offenses. You talk about Deontay Johnson. I say he's either a number one receiver or he's one of the best number twos in the game, akin to a Chris Godwin. Even a Mike Williams, I think he's a notch above that. And then you add in George Pickens, who I thought should have been a top 15 pick. That dude's been a stud through training camp and preseason. Pickens realistically could be the best receiver from this class if he can stay healthy. And part of the reason why he fell in the draft was apparently there were some character concerns. And he did have moments in college getting into fights and squirting water bottles onto opponents. Generally, I thought that stuff was playful and kind of competitive and at the same time hilarious. If there's any player that's immature, and I'm not saying he is, I don't know him, Mike Tomlin's a perfect guy for that. When it comes to falling in line with the standard that has been set in Pittsburgh, this team's aspirations and the foundation is so strong. I laughed when he said this is a 6-win team because I look at all of these young head coaches they're playing. You talk about in Miami, first year head coach Mike McDaniel, week 7. And the following week, Nick Sirianni. Then we play Dennis Allen and Todd Bowles. Brandon, I know you're not very high on Dennis Allen because of his stint with the terrible Raiders. Zach Taylor as well. We don't know if he's a good head coach. We've seen Mike McCarthy win a Super Bowl. And I think Taylor does have stuff to prove, though his team was highly successful last season because they didn't make the playoffs. There's a good chance Zach Taylor would have been on the hot seat if he wasn't already. Outside of Belichick and McDermott, most of these coaches, even Matt Rule and John Harbaugh, of course, are unproven. And I think when you have Mike Tomlin, you can beat a team with more talent because this defense is well-rounded, I was talking about earlier. But the offense with George Pickens and Deontay, while having 2 stars in Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth going to their second season, there is a lot of versatility because you talk about speed. We had that in Calvin Austin, who's on the PUP list. He's a 5'8" receiver that I think will be incorporated later on in the year. And we have size and athleticism in Chase Claypool. There's so much versatility in the way we can attack teams. One week may be Deontay, the next 4 weeks is maybe Najee. And then we'll have a 2-touchdown performance by Pat Freiermuth, while Chase Claypool has a big-time performance. And I think the Steelers team can beat you in so many different ways offensively. The concern here, and it's a big concern, is the left side of the offensive line. We kind of brushed past it in our Steelers preview. I think special teams this year will be fine. We have an elite kicker in Chris Boswell, and I'm expecting Presley Harvin, who had a disappointing rookie season, to be one of the best punters in the league this year because he's looked great in camp. But Dan Moore Jr. has looked pretty terrible in preseason. And it's preseason. He's basically had the left tackle job handed to him, and for a former 4th-round pick that was very up and down last year and not very reliable, I am very worried he's not going to progress this year, just because there's not much competition for him to really lose that job, and I feel like it's just been handed to him. Then at left guard, we have Kevin Dotson, who's a good guard when healthy. He's just literally never healthy. And when he's out, his replacement is a former 3rd-round pick in Kendrick Green, who's just not an NFL player. He's barely 6 foot, he has no length, and he just gets embarrassed sometimes the way he can lose reps. And he's one of the most unreliable backups in the league that we invested a day 2 pick into him. So if Dan Moore is not progressing and Kevin Dotson is injured, this offensive line is screwed. I mean, it's going to be one of the worst in football because the right side is actually fine. We add in James Daniels for 3 years, $27 million, or that might have been Chuck Okora for his contract. Those 2 guys at right guard and right tackle are fine, and I think Mason Cole at center is just going to be starter level. But ultimately, the only thing that's going to hold the Steelers' offense back is Mitch early in the season and that left side of the offensive line not protecting them the way it should. But I do think with how much talent there is here in Pittsburgh and how consistently they draft receivers and how special Najee was last year, they can overcome that to a degree. I think for many of these games, I have us beating the Patriots week 2, Bengals I have us losing the first week of the season, but I can see us beating one of Tampa Bay or Buffalo because every year we beat a few teams that we aren't in the same playing field as. Last year, we would have beaten the Packers if it weren't for an offsides on a blocked punt, which Joe Hayden had, that basically gave us all the momentum. And I thought if that touchdown wasn't turned back in the first half, we would have beaten Green Bay that week. And I think that was on the road as well. And then you look at New Orleans, Indianapolis, the Falcons, down the stretch with the Panthers, Raiders, and the Browns again. I think all of those games are winnable. The Steelers every year are going to have a few snooze fests like many teams, and we may lose to a couple of bad teams like the Browns. But overall, you can't overlook the way they can beat teams and how versatile they'll be on both ends of the ball.
So just quick, I don't think, did you say what you had the record finishing as? What's your
Ten
score?
and 7.
10-7. Okay. Yeah, and I think Justin had him 10-7 as well. And I have him 6-11. So yeah, I think we all see the promise in this team, and I'm just saying they're a year or two away from actually being that guy because Kenny Pickett's got to obviously, progress, and we actually have to see him in regular season football